Hey guys, in this video we're talking about how COVID can actually exponentially grow your detailing business through mobile detailing and specifically more on maintenance clients. So guys, I know it sounds crazy to say, but actually in 2020, the COVID year, I had the biggest year in my detailing business ever in the last 10 years. Now, just to give you a little bit of context for this video, I am at a maintenance client's house here. This is their Defender. They actually have many cars that I maintain, but I'm just doing a simple exterior wash and protection here. It's very, very straightforward. This Defender gets protected, does not get driven all the time, and basically stays in the garage and stays protected, so it's a very straightforward exterior maintenance detail. But I want to dive into some of the potential reasons of why COVID actually can exponentially grow your detailing business, because it sounds so counterintuitive. And one of the points I want to make here is that yes, this is actually something that is counterintuitive by nature, and so it does take a little bit of further explanation to come to any conclusion that might be close to being accurate. I will give a little bit of a disclaimer. I am not saying that each of these reasons are definitively one by one the exact reasons why my detailing business did so well in 2020 and did the best it's ever done. I'm simply saying that they're things worth analyzing because they might be things that you should contribute to in your business, that you should feed in your business, or that you should adapt to in your business. Now, guys, one of the most famous scientists that I, really love to read is Charles Darwin, right? Now, I'm not necessarily an evolutionist, and this isn't about evolutionary theory, but Darwin actually talked about a lot of things other than evolutionary theory and kind of ideas that were wrapped up in evolutionary theory that I think are really kind of attributable, or you might say you could apply them to the business world. And one of those things is that, of course, those who change survive, or those who adapt survive, or things that stay, another way to say that would be things that stay stagnant or remain in stasis actually die over time necessarily from competition. And what ended up happening in the COVID-19 2020 era is that this dramatic change happened, and all of these people or businesses that were in a position where they couldn't change ended up dying, right? So what I'm really referring to here is a lot of times people who had a stationary business in one particular place, retail, store related, they couldn't actually offer the product because there were no customers. They didn't have the facility or the money or the adaptability because of the size of the company in order to address the needs that the customers had staying at home, all that sort of stuff. So there was these necessary deaths that ended up happening, a lack of change, right? So you could invert that saying, right? Those who adapt survive, and you could say those who don't change die. And what ended up being unbelievably useful in a way that was probably impossible to anticipate is the mobile detailing arena. So once again, I'm not saying that any of these things are the definitive reasons of why my business grew exponentially this year, but they are worth thinking about. There was an unbelievable increase in the amount of customers who called specifically asking about mobile detailing. What I mean by that is if you are a mobile detailer, you'll probably have noticed a pattern in your business. When people call you, they don't necessarily word it specifically in the mobile detailing way, right? You talk about detailing, you talk about auto detailing, but they're not asking, and they don't specifically call you saying, do you offer mobile detailing, right? This is something that is sometimes assumed, but it's a lot of times something that comes at the end of the conversation where you say, hey, I actually come to you. I've got an entire built out van. I have all the products, da-da-da-da-da. What's your address, right? But the amount of customers who called specifically asking for mobile detailing was unbelievably interesting to me, and it made me think there's no way for me to ignore this in the COVID era. People obviously want people to come to them, right? Now, this is intuitively true, and it's kind of like an obvious truth, right? But the point is, people couldn't leave, people didn't want to leave, but they didn't want services like this to stop, at least in my area, which is interesting. Now, that being said, I'm not talking about my maintenance clients here. I'm not talking about people who I already was working with. The amount of people who called asking in a new customer form was absolutely unbelievable, which I just thought was interesting because you would think that things like this weren't on people's mind. Now, in addition to that, people naturally spend a ton of time in their cars, and they weren't necessarily spending a ton of time in their cars during COVID, which made me think, and there were some assumptions made, hey, maybe people aren't going to want their vehicles detailed because they're just not in their vehicles. This ended up not being true once again, which just goes to show you can make plans all day long, but until you get real data in, those plans really don't mean much because the data said people still wanted the details done and they wanted a sort of sanitation reset. So even with the customer being in their car for less time, they actually still wanted a detail at the same rate or more because of the fear of the germs, virus, being sanitary, all of those things. So it's interesting that that variable actually outweighed the fact that they were spending less time in their vehicle. Kind of interesting, I think. Now, in addition to that, something that I just thought was really good to kind of accept in this time is that things might actually not ever go back to the normal way of being, to the way they were before COVID. And because of that, the mobile detailers were naturally positioned just from a sheer objective, logical point of view to succeed in a way where the stationary detailers were not made to succeed or not set up to succeed. In the same way, people who had online businesses were set up to succeed naturally from the sort of downfall of COVID that other businesses were set up to fail from this COVID environment. But saying that, would it be difficult for a stationary detailing company or a detailing company that works out of a shop to offer a simple mobile option and to capitalize on it? Of course not. And this goes into, once again, that sort of Darwinian view of just those who adapt survive. Those who change end up surviving. And not just surviving, it's probably worth also saying those who change have the opportunity, and maybe from a statistical point of view, it might be more accurate to say dramatically increase their probability of not just surviving, but also experiencing advantages of opportunity that other people do not. Now, in addition to this, I experienced just an overall increase in this kind of mindset that people had of, I want people to come to my house to provide me certain services. So this is super interesting. Things like mobile pet spas, like people who brought their pets to get cleaned and groomed and washed and all that sort of stuff at these different pet grooming areas, are now actually these companies are offering the same service at somebody's house. In addition to that, things like people doing haircuts and dyeing people's hair, and women who get their hair colored and men who get their hair colored and people who get their hair cut, their barbers actually coming to the house. In addition to that, I even have different teams that I work with in my online side of my business, and they changed from their office actually being outside of the home and kind of leasing a space to their office being inside of the home, and one of the rooms being dedicated for all of the employees to congregate. And business meetings in general are happening at people's houses, no longer necessarily at the office, which ended up once again being a huge advantage for guys like me in the mobile detailing arena, because it's not only easier to detail cars at residential homes versus at commercial offices, but it was also something that once again I saw an increased rate or an increased demand in this COVID season. So guys, those are like some of the observations I've been making and kind of working through in my head. I would love to hear in the comments below what you think about that and your kind of analysis of that data. Guys, before we end here, I want to make sure you get a look at the after of this sick Land Rover. So here it is. Alright guys, that is it. Make sure before you leave, you go below this video and grab my free guide to starting your auto detailing business for under $500, where I give you guys the exact tools and products you need to start in this business so you don't have to waste a decade buying products and tools that do not work and you can get straight to it, start making money right away. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you get notified when I publish future videos. And as always, from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I'll see you guys in the next video.